Good morning, dear students. So today's topic will be oxygen dissociation curve and also transport of carbon dioxide. We'll complete today this topic. So oxygen dissociation curve. So what is the meaning of this oxygen dissociation curve means? It explains, okay, it explains the relationship between percentage saturation of hemoglobin with partial pressure of oxygen. So we are going to draw a graph here. So this one will be the x-axis and this one will be the y-axis. On x-axis we are plotting the partial pressure of oxygen, and on y-axis we are plotting percentage saturation of hemoglobin. Okay, so generally we see the graph will be like this. That means it is a sigmoid curve. Okay, it is a sigmoid curve. So let us see at which partial pressure how much of oxygen is at partial pressure of so at which partial pressure how much of hemoglobin is getting saturated. So that is the point we are going to see now. Yeah. So here this one is 20 mmHg, this one is 40 mmHg, this is 100 mmHg. So at 20 mmHg, how much of hemoglobin is saturated means 35%. At 40 mmHg, it is 75%. At 100 mmHg, it is 97%. So we see the normal pH of blood is 7.4. The normal pH of blood is 7.4. So let us see where the formation of hemoglobin occurs. So if we see the formation of hemoglobin, oxyhemoglobin, and dissociation of oxyhemoglobin, let us see what are the conditions for formation and dissociation. So we see the first one, formation of oxyhemoglobin. Here dissociation of oxyhemoglobin. So where the formation occurs, that is the question. Occurs at lungs. So oxyhemoglobin formation occurs at lungs. Then factors favorable. Factors favorable for formation. So what are the factors favorable? Let us see. PO2 should be more, PCO2 should be less, temperature should be less, then H plus ion should be less, then pH will be more. So these are the conditions. If these conditions are there, then oxyhemoglobin formation occurs. Then what are the factors associated for the dissociation? Dissociation of oxyhemoglobin occurs at tissues. Where it is occurring? Occurs at tissues. So what are the factors favorable for dissociation? So we have to write opposite factors here. So quite opposite factors I am writing. So PO2 will be always less at the tissues. Then PCO2 should be more. Temperature should be more. H plus ion concentration should be more. Then pH should be less. So these are the conditions. So at 35 at partial pressure of oxygen, if the partial pressure of oxygen is 20 mmHg, partial pressure of oxygen is 40 mmHg, partial pressure of oxygen at 100 mmHg, how much hemoglobin is saturated? So partial pressure of oxygen is 20 mmHg at skeletal muscle which is undergoing vigorous activity. 40 mmHg will be at tissues. So it will be at lungs or alveoli. Then if you see here, the partial pressure of oxygen at the partial pressure of oxygen at the partial pressure of 20 mmHg. So partial pressure of oxygen will be 20 mmHg at skeletal muscle. Why? The skeletal muscle is undergoing vigorous exercise. If the skeletal muscle is undergoing vigorous exercise, then the partial pressure will be 20 mmHg in the skeletal muscle. So at 20 mmHg, how much of hemoglobin is saturated? Hemoglobin saturated at 20 mmHg is 35%. Okay, so the skeletal muscle requires more oxygen. So more oxygen is liberated at skeletal muscle. At the partial pressure of 40 mmHg will be at tissues. In tissues, the partial pressure of oxygen will be 40 mmHg. Then percentage saturation will be hemoglobin. Hemoglobin will be 75%. Okay. Then, if we see the at tissues due to liberation or at tissues due to breakdown of oxyhemoglobin, the oxygen dissociation curve shifts towards the right side. pH will be 7.6. So the curve shifts towards right side. Why the curve is shifting towards right side means due to breakdown of oxyhemoglobin. So where the dissociation of oxyhemoglobin occurs, the dissociation of oxyhemoglobin occurs at the tissues due to low partial pressure. So the curve shifts towards the right side. Generally the curve shifts towards the left side at lungs, where the partial pressure of oxygen will be more. So this is about the oxygen dissociation curve. Right. Now let us go for the next one. Right. At 100%, if the partial pressure of oxygen, if the hemoglobin is 100% saturated, one hemoglobin molecules 4 oxygen molecules. One hemoglobin molecule carries 4 oxygen molecules. At 100% saturation, 100 hemoglobin molecule carries how much? That is 400 oxygen molecules. At 97%, 100 hemoglobin molecules carries how much of oxygen means 97 into 400 divided by 100, that equal to 388 moles of oxygen. So 100 hemoglobin molecules carry 388 moles of oxygen at 97% saturation. Then when how much one hemoglobin molecule carry means 3.88 molecules of oxygen. So at 97% of saturation, if the hemoglobin is 97% saturated, then how much hemoglobin is carrying oxygen means one hemoglobin is carrying 3.88 molecules of oxygen. So partial pressure of oxygen is proportional to the saturation of hemoglobin. So let us see now Bohr effect. Effect of carbon dioxide on oxygen binding capacity with hemoglobin. That means how the carbon dioxide affects the oxygen and oxygen binding capacity with hemoglobin. So if the carbon dioxide is present, then oxygen binding capacity with hemoglobin reduces. Why? Carbon dioxide is having more affinity towards hemoglobin when compared to the oxygen. So 100 ml of blood carries 20 ml of oxygen. Then 5000 ml of blood carries how much of oxygen means you can see here 1000 ml to 1200 ml. Right, that is about the additional information. Now let us go for the transport of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is transported from where to where? From tissues to lungs. Okay. So carbon dioxide is transported by plasma and also RBC. In plasma, it is transported as physical solution. So as physical solution, 7% of carbon dioxide is transported. As carb-amino compounds, 20 to 25% of carbon dioxide is transported. As bicarbonates, 70% of carbon dioxide is transported. That means more carbon dioxide is transported by carbonates in the form of bicarbonates. So as physical solution, how much? 7%. So carbon dioxide combines with the plasma, that means water present in plasma, and forms carbonic acid. So formation of carbonic acid occurs in tissues and dissociation of bicarbonic acid occurs at lungs. In lungs, the carbonic acid dissociates into carbon dioxide and water, and the carbon dioxide is sent out from the lungs towards the exterior as carbamino hemoglobin. So as carbamino hemoglobin, 20 to 25% of carbon dioxide is transported as carbamino hemoglobin. So carbon dioxide combines with NH2 of plasma proteins and forms carbamino compound in plasma. This is in plasma. Then carbon dioxide combines with amino group of hemoglobin and forms carbamino hemoglobin. So the carbamino hemoglobin is formed in the RBC. Let us see how this carbamino compound is formed. So formation and dissociation. Formation occurs in tissues. Okay. Factors favorable for formation is low partial pressure of oxygen and high partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Then dissociation occurs in lungs due to high PO2 concentration and low PCO2 concentration. Right. Now let us go for the next one as bicarbonates. So 70% of carbon dioxide is transported in the form of bicarbonate. Most of the carbon dioxide is transported as bicarbonate. So in RBC and plasma, there is an enzyme called as carbonic anhydrase. Carbonic anhydrase is present both in plasma and also in RBC. In RBC, the carbonic anhydrase is more, and in plasma, the carbonic anhydrase is less. So carbon dioxide, when enters into the RBC, it combines with water present in the RBC in the presence of carbonic anhydrase and forms bicarbonate. You can see here. Okay, this bicarbonate dissociates into, this carbonic acid dissociates into bicarbonate and H plus ion concentration or H plus ion. This H plus ion combines with hemoglobin and forms hemoglobin acidic. As H plus ion concentrations is increasing inside the RBC, one bicarbonate ion diffuses from RBC and enters into the plasma. Okay, so to maintain electrical neutrality, one chloride ion present in the plasma enters into the RBC. So this exchange of bicarbonate and chloride ions between RBC and plasma is called as chloride shift. So generally the chloride shift occurs at the tissues. Chloride shift occurs at the tissues. Right. Then reverse chloride shift occurs at the lungs. Then 100 ml of blood can carry 4 ml of carbon dioxide. Okay. Next one is Haldane effect. So effect of oxygen on carbon dioxide affinity to hemoglobin. So generally if the partial pressure of oxygen is more, then definitely the hemoglobin dissociates carbon dioxide and combines with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobins. So generally Haldane effect occurs at the lungs. So very important point, this one also. Now let us go for the neural control. That means control of respiratory movements and respiratory rhythms. Or we can simply say a regulation of respiration. So respiratory rhythm center, where it is present? It is present in the medulla oblongata. Okay, respiratory rhythm center primary function is responsible for respiratory rhythm and controls contraction of respiratory muscles. So the first function of respiratory rhythm center is maintaining the respiratory rhythm and controlling the contraction of respiratory muscles. Generally, respiratory rhythm center is stimulated by carbon dioxide. Remember, respiratory rhythm center is stimulated by carbon dioxide. But there is one more important point, that oxygen. Oxygen is not having any role in respiratory rhythm center. Oxygen cannot stimulate respiratory rhythm center. Very important point. Next one is pneumotoxic center. Pneumotoxic center is present in the pons. What is the function of pneumotoxic center? Moderates the function of respiratory rhythm center. It is moderating the function of respiratory rhythm center. Increases the rate of respiration by reducing the duration of inspiration. Okay, it increases the rate of respiration by decreasing the time in the inspiration. Next one is chemosensitive area. So chemosensitive areas are present in medulla near the pons. These chemosensitive areas are very sensitive for carbon dioxide and H plus ion concentration. If concentration of carbon dioxide and H plus ion increases, then the chemosensitive areas send signals to the chemosensitive areas. Chemosensitive areas are present in the medulla near the pons. So chemosensitive areas are very sensitive for carbon dioxide and hydrogen ion concentration. If concentration of carbon dioxide and H plus ion concentration increases, the chemosensitive areas send signals to the pneumotoxic center. Okay, this pneumotoxic center signals send the signals to the respiratory rhythm center. So respiratory rhythm center increases the rate of respiration and carbon dioxide and H plus ions are eliminated. So in this direction they will go. So in this direction right? So that is about the chemosensitive areas. Now let us go for the next one more is there, that is the chemoreceptors. Chemoreceptors are present at the base of carotid artery and aortic arch. Carotid artery means the artery which enters into the neck region. Aortic arch means the systemic arch that is arising from the left ventricle. So at the base of these two, the chemoreceptors are present, which are sensitive for carbon dioxide and H plus ion concentration. So this when they detect the carbon dioxide and H plus ion concentration, they send signals to the respiratory rhythm center to increase the rate of respiration. So same like chemo sensitive areas, the chemoreceptors are also functioning in the same way. So this completes about the regulation of respiration. Now let us go for the next one, respiratory disorders. In the respiratory disorders, the first one is asthma. So asthma means it is a type of allergy. So the substances which cause allergy are called as allergens. And these allergens stimulate the release of histamines. What are the symptoms of asthma? So symptoms of asthma include spasms in the bronchial muscles. So the bronchial muscles get inflamed. So this is the normal bronchi, but inside the bronchi, if a person is suffering with asthma, his muscles will get inflamed. So it causes coughing, wheezing, difficulty in breathing. Okay, so that is wheezing means producing sounds in the lungs. Right, we go for the next one, bronchitis. So we go for the next one, emphysema. Emphysema is another one disorder which is chronic. In emphysema, the alveolar walls are damaged. So here if we see, this is the entire alveoli. Okay. So what is happening here? The alveolar walls are damaged and the alveoli will become few and they get enlarged in size. So here there are more alveoli are present in this case, but here only few. But they are enlarging. So that what is happening here? The respiratory surface has been reduced and the alveoli becomes more fibrous and less elastic. So reason, cigarette smoking. And here also the person suffers with chronic cough and persistent cough, and also he feels a difficulty in breathing because exchange of gases are affected at the level of alveoli. So emphysema affect the exchange of gases. Okay, remember that. Bronchitis, inflammation to the bronchi. So inside the bronchi there is a mucus lining. So this mucus lining will swell. Okay, as the mucus lining will swell, the diameter of the bronchi becomes less, right? So what happens? What are the symptoms of bronchitis? Means persistent cough, difficulty in breathing, and phlegm in split. That means when you cough, the phlegm will come into your throat and you spit that phlegm. But in asthma there is no phlegm, but in bronchitis there is phlegm. So what is meant by COPD now? Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease is called as COPD. Which diseases are coming under COPD? Asthma, emphysema, and bronchitis. Asthma, emphysema, and bronchitis comes under the COPD. So there is one more disease called as pneumonia. Pneumonia is a non-COPD disease. It is not. It does not come under the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Let us see what is meant by pneumonia also. So pneumonia is also very important. So it is, the pneumonia is infectious disease. Infectious disease, and it is caused by, this question is very important, Streptococcus pneumoniae, and also it is caused by Mycoplasma. Mycoplasma. So symptoms includes inflammation of lungs. Inflammation of lungs. Okay. Not symptoms, it is, and also third one is inflammation of lungs. Now let us go for the symptoms. So what are the symptoms? You see the symptoms: accumulation of mucus in lungs. That means the alveoli are completely filled up with mucus or fluids. Due to that, exchange of gases is impaired. That means it affects the exchange of gases. Then, if untreated, it leads to death. Leads to death. So this is about the pneumonia. Now let us go for the occupational disorders. So one more thing is there, a very important one, that is the occupational disorders. So this is also very important. That means the disorders of the lungs which occurs due to their profession. Okay. So here see, we can see here name of the disorder and cause due to inhalation of. So why this disorder is caused? By what inhaling? So that is very important point. So first one, let us see asbestosis. Asbestosis is nothing but it is a cement dust caused due to inhalation of asbestos dust. Generally they use this one in making cement sheets. Okay. Second one is silicosis. Inhalation of silica dust. People those are working in stone crushing industries will inhale the silica dust. Third one, siderosis, inhalation of iron particles. Last one, black lung disease. So inhalation of coal dust. The people those are working in iron ores will get siderosis. The people those are working in coal mines will get black lung disease. Okay. So this completes about the breathing and exchange of gases. So remaining the next one is body fluids and circulation. We'll see in the next class. Okay. Thank you very much, and I'll conduct one examination on breathing and exchange of gases. Prepare well.